Hello, everyone. I'm Brian Carrington, and you are listening to the final Call Talk of the year. That's right. We've gone through 11 Call Talks already. We're going to take next month off, so this will be our final Call Talk of 2014. Next Call Talk will be in 2015 in January. So, pretty exciting topic. This is going to be a recap kind of show, and I want to, before we jump into it, remind you that all of our shows are, of course, archived, and hopefully that's where you're listening to it right now. It's on our website at BenchmarkPortal.com. You can go through there, and we have just hundreds of different topics around contact centers there to help you with your operations and hopefully provide you more success in your day-to-day operations and work. So, as I mentioned, what we're going to do in the topic for today's show is going to be a recap of our call center campus that we had just 2 weeks ago in Las Vegas. It was a great event, lots of people, lots of great speakers, but there's a lot of good information that you may have missed if you couldn't be there. And that's what we want to do in today's show, is help you with some of that information and to really help recap and highlight all the wonderful things from our call center campus event. We have Bruce Belfiore and Amy Novak.
Well, hello, Brian. I had a great time, let me just start by saying, at Call Center Campus this week, meeting everyone face-to-face. It was wonderful. So I'm happy to be here to recap some of the moments from Call Center Campus Week.
Fantastic.
Okay, and this is Bruce, and really, we had a great week. It was a fabulous content-filled event, and we focused on the theme, Imagine Excellence, and looked at people, technology, connections from today to your tomorrow. We asked people to imagine, what do you think is going to change? What are you excited about? What are you afraid of? What keeps you up at night? And in the perfect world, what would you like to see for your own center and for the industry? So those were some of the themes that we captured, and really got a wonderful reaction from the crowd that was there. So happy to be talking with Amy today to recap some of the highlights. And we had the great pleasure of our old friend, Professor Richard Feinberg of Purdue University, who joined us for this year's Call Center Campus and delivered the keynote speech. And Amy, maybe you'd like to share some of your thoughts on that speech.
Hi, Bruce. Certainly. Actually, I must say, Dr. Feinberg certainly had a way of grabbing the audience's attention. He was quite humorous, and it was completely unexpected for myself. But the message, he had actually multiple messages intertwined into his presentation, and a couple of the ones that I wanted to share with everyone. The first message, which I recall being, most, or having the most impact on me, which was looking at a video that he showed to the entire symposium audience, and it was about goals. And the message basically was presenting, are you clearly communicating? And when you watch this video and hear going through the first process of, what is the company's goals, and individuals trying to stumble upon and or respond what they believe was the company's goals, and then also looking at how does their job actually relate to those company's goals. I thought that was very insightful, and it was enlightening, I think, for those around me as well, to see what people may really or do not know as it relates to their centers and or their organization. Another point that Dr. Feinberg had, he had a slide up, and he had all these numbers listed, and I don't remember them verbatim what he had down there, but there was all these numbers listed on the slide, and he's like, well, what do these numbers mean? Where everybody's looking at each other like, well, that's a darn good question. What does it mean? And he started rattling off that it was his triglycerides and his blood pressure, and the point of that was, does your organization, do you as a leader understand the difference between a lot of data, and useful data? And it was funny just to see some of those numbers, like, well, yeah, maybe your triglycerides aren't important, but it's how that was related to their organization, and really was food for thought to take that away. And then finally, he also had a great question and or statement regarding doing the same thing the same way? And do you expect something different to happen if you're always doing the same thing the same way? And just understanding how rapidly technology has changed, and not to mention technology, but the customer's expectations. And how can an organization and or a call center improve and grow if you're not truly changing to meet those needs? As we're all aware, all of us having our smartphones, we're looking to, access whatever we need through those smartphones. So it's looking at it from that customer's perspective and how can we meet those needs if we're not changing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think those are all great points, and really the whole need to change, because change is uncomfortable. None of us really like to change, but we have to actually embrace the change in order to embrace excellence. And in order to imagine excellence, we have to kind of break outside of some of our mental parameters that we're often in, and we have to do fundamental reviews of things like metrics, do a good spring cleaning of metrics, do a good spring cleaning on some of the cultural premises that you operate your call center on, because maybe there's some things that you really need to change. And there's another thing that struck me that he talked about. He said, if you were a customer, okay, and I send this out as a challenge to all of our listeners, if you were a customer and called your center after calling all of the competitor centers, can you guarantee that the place you would enjoy most interacting with is your center because of how it makes you succeed and feel? Okay, so let's throw that out to the audience and say, okay, think about all your customers, think about all your competitors. Is yours the best? And if it's not, in what way isn't it, and why? And I think that was a really excellent food for thought. And he talked about the challenges of creating customer experience vision and the organizational change, as you mentioned. He also talked about somebody called Bracco the Gazer. Do you remember that?
Oh, goodness, yes. That was quite silly. I had never heard of Bracco until his presentation. So, yes, that was quite entertaining.
He's apparently a popular, social media figure who will just sort of stare at things. And the one thing that maybe we can take away from that one is that sometimes you just have to stop and kind of stare at what you're doing until you actually can see through the day-to-day noise and understand what you're really doing. And sort of look at with that placid look and but very, very active mind and figure out what it is that you're doing. So we encourage everybody to Google Bracco the Gazer and maybe to think about.
I'm sorry, I just keep envisioning the picture. That's quite humorous.
You like that one, huh, Brian? So, do some gazing, do some navel gazing and gazing into the things you're doing now. And really, is it as aligned with your corporate goals as it should be? Are you really energizing your agents? And he talked about, the fact that 70% of CSR dissatisfaction, comes from frontline managers. And so what do we need to do to pump up the preparation and competence of our supervisorial staff and that sort of thing? And he also had a quote from Fromm and Schlesinger, which said, the real heroes of business are the frontline people, and there's not one CEO among them. So we really are, as call center managers, the custodians of the heroes of our enterprises. But we don't always feel that way, and we have to bring things around so that it, in fact, is clear not only to us but to others as well. So, yeah, it was a fun time. So how about on to the next one, Amy?
Certainly. The next presentation, actually, which comes to mind, was from Synchrony Financial. And their presentation was about engaging their employees in a customer-centric culture. And I found it actually interesting. They're a larger, institute, and it was how they engage their employees by making changes from the top down. And it was nice to hear how they have continued to improve morale by consistent employee engagement. And one of the statements that was made was, making certain that clear, consistent communication is continually provided, because that is what has aided in their success of that employee engagement. One of the items that was shared during that presentation was their idea of the engagement profile experience. And what they do is they have this employee engagement, and they indicate it's connecting, developing, and celebrating basically the agent, which they indicate would be, you or their agent. And so they, by incorporating and creating and implementing this engagement profile, is part of what they use to help develop internal relationships that support growth, but it also helps as they're introducing new talent to support, any kind of standalone readiness. And it truly was connecting how they partner with not only internally their coworkers, but also, clients, their consumers, as well as, just making it an overall like a community feel. And so again, it has appeared, just based off of my perception listening to the presentation, that they have developed relationships, very strong relationships among their staff.
Right. And this is a situation, it was Heath Hansberger who came and gave this very, very good talk, and he noted that Synchrony Financial was formerly GE Financial. So they've had quite a challenge, because they have been hived off from GE. They've got a new name. They have to sort of create a new persona in the marketplace while preserving the best of the GE culture and developing some new aspects of the culture. And he said that over and over he wanted to be a customer-centric culture and get the employee engagement of these 10,000 employees as he's building the new brand and employee culture. And one of the ways that they were doing that was through what he called Development U, or sort of like Development University, with themes that were focused on learning and engagement, and they have courses built around this. And one of the things he mentioned is that you have to tell people really clearly what's expected of them. This oftentimes we think we're doing, because we have it very clear in our head what they're supposed to be doing as managers, but we don't always convey that and communicate that well in terms of clear, defined goals and how to accomplish the goals. How to help people to get there, and then also hold them accountable. So if we have a good vision for that and a robust voice of the employee program, where we get things back from the employees through properly done surveys, et cetera, then you can really have a very exciting situation where you're not only imagining excellence, but you're also attaining it.
But an important point I'd like to, just kind of extract from there is, when communicating with centers, that is that first step when they're talking about, developing and growing their team, is, communicating to them what is expected. And what really stands out with, Heath's presentation was, not only are they communicating what's expected and helping their team get there, but they're holding them accountable. And more often than not, you'll encounter centers that kind of, falls to the back burner a little bit more often than not, where they're looking at what can we do to provide these expectations. We want to keep developing. And this was truly, I thought, an important element to incorporate and make certain we're truly holding them accountable for, this develop, growth, learning, and doing it as a team, again, from that top down.
Right. And making that accountability as much an appreciated part of the culture as the kudos and everything else, I think, is a key part of it all. Well, one of the things we did a lot of at Call Center Campus was breakout sessions, because we had heard the previous year that that's what people wanted. They really liked the ability to interact with their peers at the event. And tell us how you thought that went, Amy.
Most certainly, Bruce. Actually, I led 3 of the breakout sessions. The first one that I led was for their customer-centric culture and looking at customer satisfaction. And what I found interesting as we, began our discussion is that it quickly turned from looking at just customer satisfaction, but those that were participating noted the correlation between agent satisfaction and customer satisfaction. And so they were recognizing as well as voicing the importance of giving their agents right tools and training and knowledge. And if the agents didn't have this information and were not satisfied themselves, that the customer satisfaction would be impacted. So, some of the other items that were talked about during that group were, looking even at the customer satisfaction tools to bring that agent back and review some of that information as it related to the customer's feedback. And it, again, was truly, eye-opening to see how many individuals were now looking more than just at customer satisfaction versus agent satisfaction, but looking at the correlation between both and how could they make the improvements and or changes, to gain the increased satisfaction overall from both agents, which eventually enlighten and, appease and satisfy their customers. So that was interesting. The next two breakout sessions that I led were over quality. And it was, the teams or the participants, I guess I should state, they were very excited to share, how they made improvement initiatives. They were so eager to, bring to the table, thank you for sharing that. This, they were writing down their notes. They were so happy that they were gaining knowledge as a result of that networking, that interaction with those who were sharing how they made improvements. And then, we're also talking how they couldn't wait to bring some of those, ideas and implement them back, or implement them once they return back to their offices. A few of the key points for the quality was looking at technology advancements, because again, technology is ever changing. In order to, appease a customer, they're looking at how can they increase technology to aid in the overall quality assessment process, but then also recognizing not only with technology, but how important people and processes are and how they truly interrelate to the technology advancements that were being shared, such as speech recognition, just to name one. But to take it back, I guess, to like the original stepping stone is, looking at that quality process and understanding, if the quality process right now is used as a feedback mechanism, understanding how can they then incorporate a coaching perspective, because the importance of the people and processes to that quality assurance program is truly important for the overall success of the program, and just sharing, again, different ideas as to, who should be responsible for feedback, who should be, providing that coaching, and then clearly communicating to the staff, if it was the same person providing feedback and coaching, what is feedback versus coaching. And it helped enlighten, I think, many individuals, so that way when they return back to their office, they were able to, hopefully incorporate or start incorporating some of these ideas that they took away from these sessions.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I definitely saw were eyes popping. You could see light bulbs going off in people's heads.
Yes.
And part of that was because of the fact that we had a good cross-industry representation. There were people from different industries, and you could, in conversations and also in the breakout session, somebody would say, well, I'm in such and such an industry, and I never thought that I could pick up something from somebody in this other industry, and yet this was a best practice idea I'm definitely going to bring home and do something with. And we also had an international group there. So there were some very perceptive comments by a participant from the Middle East who came in. Mm-hmm. Of course, we had participants from Canada, from sort of the Caribbean, South America area, and So, these were all able to come together and work with us. Last year, if you recall, we had people also from China, and the cross fertilization that goes on is very exciting, and I think people were able to bring home some great thoughts in terms of actual best practices that they can implement, particularly when it comes to the agent area, and how do you get this accountability? Because some people are really having a problem; they're struggling with accountability. And what is the proper mix of making sure that you get the right people, make sure that you inform them of what they need to do, then help them get there, and going from helping them get there to firing them if they don't is sometimes a real challenge for people. But anyway, great breakout sessions. And we also had John Spiker, who presented Imagine Excellence, the Art of the Possible in Today's Contact Center. John, an old friend of ours, works for Cisco and brought some really good thoughts there as well. Amy, do you have some comments you'd like to make there?
Yes, actually, listening to John's presentation, it was very enlightening. He actually was very clever about it because you can see where presenters, I actually should say all the presenters this year were very clever with incorporating the participant engagement. And John did so with his presentation. He was engaging the audience on interactive exercises in order not only to help them gain an understanding on what matters they've achieved within their centers, but also to provide basically a pathway of possibilities for those that were considering, those same options within their center for items such as website, mobile applications, and social media. And, the website seemed, again, my perception was the largest discussion point because everyone was looking at, how could they, continue to make improvements overall, not only to their website, but for marketing, but for that customer effort, the customer, self-service, and then it trickled down into the mobile applications as well as social media. But not only, making certain that they had all that information incorporated in these technology platforms, but then how can they extract information from those platforms to measure and track what those customers' needs are. And it was nice to hear some of the interjection from the participants on items that they had encountered with their center, and again, seeing the eyes pop and have the aha kind of moment where, other centers were like, oh, maybe I should look at that on our website, or, maybe we can consider mobile apps. So that was very interesting, or what I found interesting, for John's presentation.
So for our listeners, really the idea is, we were talking before about doing some gazing. And so gaze at your website. How is it that it actually interacts with your customer contact function? Does it support the function? Is it nice and clear? The mobile apps, are there mobile apps that are appropriate for your company or not? And are there ways that you might be able to incorporate those into your delivery of really superb customer service? So those, I think, are takeaways that people listening here can perhaps work on. Another thing was a talk that I gave on Net Promoter Score and Customer Effort Score. And this was a little bit of a Molotov cocktail tossed into the session. And it gained a lot of its content from conversations we had earlier this year with Dr. Fred Van Bennekom. And anyone who's interested in those sessions could find them in our archives. They were the April and the June shows for Call Talk. And the main thing here, since Call Center Campus really is meant to make people think and give them new ideas, was to give a bit of a critique of Net Promoter Score and how it's used, and the same for Customer Effort Score. So we did a little bit in terms of, what's the history of these things, customer satisfaction, scoring going back pretty much as far as call centers, Net Promoter Score, which came in 2003 with the famous Harvard Business School article, and then Customer Effort Score, which came in with the Stop Delighting Your Customers in 2010. And one of the questions that has to be asked is, have we really found statistically valid, repeatable, reliable keys to customer loyalty? And the frank answer to that is not really. We can't come up with repeatable things or situations where we can say that a X% change in your Net Promoter Score is going to result in a Y increase in loyalty and repurchase among your people. That's the sort of thing that on a broad statistical basis simply hasn't been proven yet with either Net Promoter Score or with CES, but that doesn't mean that these two things can't be useful for you as call center managers. The idea, however, is that don't give something statistical credence where it's not, due, and put yourself on the line to your superiors in terms of relationships and correlations that you're going to be able to come up with, but rather to use these measurements in your management in a responsible way, and to use them also to focus your people on improvement, which certainly is going to be beneficial, but just keep it in the proper context. That was the idea. So, experience shows that customer sat, NPS, and CES can all be useful management measurements if they're properly used to measure customer feedback, to motivate management action, and focus frontline agents. So that's not the same as making a claim that these are going to be the things that are going to bring you and correlate with repurchase and customer loyalty, but they're still important. And the other thing we talked about was the fact that whereas Net Promoter Score tends to work better as a relationship measure, not so good as a transactional measure. That is to say, it's a great way, it tends to work better when you're getting people's opinions of overall, am I willing to suggest or to recommend this company to a friend or to a relative or to a colleague. Not so good is okay, how good was this call? Okay, because even if you put based on this call, how likely are you to recommend? There's some feeling in the community that still the overall feelings about the company or the product are going to bleed into the interaction, simply given the nature of the question. Customer effort score is more of a transactional question because it asks about, how much effort did you have to put into this? So if anybody's interested in that, there's some lively discussion on the web about this, and I'm happy to talk about it at any time as well. So did you have anything to add on that, Amy?
One of the statements that you had provided during your presentation that stuck with me was, looking at the customer loyalty. And when you're looking at customer loyalty and or measuring, make certain it's truly fact-based and not fad-based. And, looking at some of the historical information that was being tracked may not have necessarily been fact-based. And so I think that if a point should be truly looked at or remembered in terms of loyalty is looking at, the company and the facts and the data that they can provide for that measurement.
Right. Exactly. Maybe I should put a little copyright on that. But anyway, although Fred may have already done that, I'm not sure. Susan McDonald-Osborne, one of our colleagues who is a specialist in training, also spoke. And she came up with a number of really good points. And that is that in terms of the training function inside of companies, not enough managers think of it as a function to be optimized. They think of it as a necessity that has to be sort of filled up and done. And that this is really not the right way to go about it, because you see that in those situations oftentimes the training becomes something where you overload somebody with information, they retain 20 or 30% of it, and then they have to be repeat trained on the rest because sequencing is not done properly. Nobody's really thought about how to develop and to deliver the training properly. And,
in all honesty, in terms of the percentages, actually I believe it was closer, which was shocking, honestly. Agents will forget about half, 50% of what they've heard in training. And so that's why, as Susan was speaking, she was talking about, looking at what she would call a learning burst and doing those shorter, training sessions, so to speak, because, again, with 50%, envision if you're trying to, provide training on a process from start to finish and the agent or, the center is only retaining 50% of that process. That's actually quite scary, in terms of what is being done after training. So, how can that be broken into pieces to help the team better retain what they have been taught?
Exactly. And what should those pieces be? Because she said, there's an awful lot of agents turned trainers that really don't have the skills needed to design and develop effective training. They know the job, but that's not the same as really putting together and optimizing your training function. And so, I think one of her points is that oftentimes it's a good idea to go outside and to find somebody who's really a specialist in this area, and to try to optimize this very, very important area of call centers. Well, let's see. I think we've pretty much taken up the half hour here, and it's still a ton that we could talk about. But Amy, do you have any final comments before we hand things back to Brian?
The final comments were that, again, it was a pleasure to be at this year's call center campus, and there were so many takeaways from all of the presentations, and I realized we can, squeeze all of those presentations feedback into 30 minutes, but it was quite an enjoying experience in interacting with everybody that was there, all the participants, as well as listening to those presenters.
Okay. Well, great. Amy, listen, it's been great to relive this experience with you here. And with that, thank you very much, and we'll hand things back over to Brian.
All right, great, guys. Yeah, I appreciate it, both Amy and Bruce, for kind of the highlights there of Call Center Campus for 2014. And want to remind you that we're going to take next month off from Call Talk, so our next show is going to be January of 2015. Amazingly enough, time flies, boy. So also want to remind you that you can sign up for a free reality check, Benchmark Report, to see how your center compares to others in the industry. And that's just go to our website, BenchmarkPortal.com, and look for reality check. So from all of us here at Benchmark Portal, keep those headsets steady, your fingers ready. Have a great Thanksgiving. This is Brian Carrington signing out. Take care. Happy holidays, everyone. Bye-bye.